There's a reason we feel so connected when we walk through the forest. Our bodies are actually living and breathing ecosystems, utterly dependent upon other organisms for our survival. This is ecology, the study of relationships among all living things and their environment, revealing elaborate webs of interconnection and reciprocity. Let's start here with the sun. Sunlight is where life begins. These ferns carry out photosynthesis, but what happens to this energy? To answer that question, we need to look to the concept of energy flow. The ultimate source of radiant and thermal energy is, of course, the sun. Sunlight is used by plants through photosynthesis to make sugar molecules and other organic compounds which contain chemical bond energy. Animals can consume this energy, and of course humans are an animal species, transferring that energy into their bodies, and when animals die, the energy will be transferred to decomposers such as bacteria or fungi. Now plants will also die, so their energy will be transferred to decomposers. All three of these groups, the plants, animals, and decomposers, continually give off heat energy. Now, we might be tempted to think that the heat will return to the sun, but no, it's not taking that 150,000 kilometer journey. The heat is dissipated to the atmosphere and is lost to the system. This is why it's called energy flow. It transfers once through the system and then it's lost. So we should be very thankful for the sun and the sky. There is a connection through energy flow that links these ferns directly to the sun. Plants harness sunlight to make food, and we use plants as food, not to mention as building supplies, clothing, medicine, heat, fuel, oxygen, and so much more. In many ways, plants are the foundation for life on Earth. Let's look closer at the Earth. We've mentioned decomposers. Their job is to break down things such as wood into smaller and smaller pieces until they get returned to the soil. Often this will pass through the digestive system or gut of many different bugs before the small molecules are returned to the soil and slurped up through the roots of trees to become part of the branches and leaves. Bugs aren't the only decomposers. Fungi, such as these bracket fungi, also serve as decomposers. They're breaking down this trunk, and if you see this many on a trunk of a tree, it's likely the tree is either dead or well on its way to dying. Fallen trees can serve as nurse logs for other plants. In fact, in a healthy forest, there should be just as many trees on the ground as there are standing up. This fallen tree is allowing these flowers to bloom. Here's something fascinating. Only 10% of the cells of an old-growth Douglas fir are alive. The majority of inner supportive tissue is dead. Yet after a tree dies, it becomes home and food for many creatures, meaning that a dead tree has greater biomass or life than most living trees. Speaking of biomass, which is the total mass of living organisms of an area, there is just as much biomass or life under the ground as there is above in a forest. This hidden biomass includes roots, fungal hyphae that connects roots, allowing trees to communicate and share nutrients, and also numerous arthropods and other organisms. So all those trees you see in a forest, there's just as much life there as there is under your feet. How does everything cycle between these upper and lower worlds? Well, for that, we have to look to the carbon cycle. The carbon cycle is a biogeochemical cycle that shows how carbon travels through a system and is exchanged with different types of organisms. Let's start in the atmosphere. The carbon here is going to be taking the form of carbon dioxide, which plants will use to make sugars through the process of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis requires carbon dioxide, light, and water. Now, of course, animals will eat those plants, thus transferring the carbon or chemical bond energy to their bodies. This happens through ingestion, a fancy word for eating. Animals, as we know, will die, and that carbon then gets passed on to decomposers such as mushrooms or bacteria. This is through the process of decomposition. Now, decomposers will return carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Their cells are carrying out cellular respiration, which produces carbon dioxide as a byproduct. In fact, animals do cellular respiration, as do plants. Remember that plants need CO2. What we breathe out, the plants breathe in. There's one more piece to this puzzle, and that's the burning of fossil fuels, also known as combustion. This includes the burning of coal, oil, and natural gas, something humans are rather fond of doing when they drive their cars or fly in airplanes. This is very much a one-way discharge, leading to increased carbon dioxide concentrations in the atmosphere, which contributes to global heating. Given our reliance and interdependence with plants and other organisms, we might want to consider what we can offer them in return. Whether you're deep in our temperate rainforest or in your own backyard, there are countless ecological relationships to witness, ponder, and engage with in a web of reciprocity. These ferns convert light into life, and because of this, we as an animal species can exist. We are nature. Our bodies are living and breathing ecosystems made up of more non-human cells than human cells. We are inseparable from the natural world. The more time we spend outdoors, breathing in what plants exhale, the more we remember all the threads of connections that we have forgotten.